So describe what reserved and concurrent powers are. Give examples of each. All right, so what do we have here for, let's say, reserve powers? What are reserve powers? What are they? Jeffrey, go ahead.
Their powers specifically reserved to the state, including setting up local governments and determining speed limits.
Okay, all right, good job. So we talked about delegated powers before. I think that was on Monday, and how these are national powers. We talked about categories of delegated powers, which they are what? Madden, give me one form of delegated powers. You don't know national powers? Come on now. They're expressed, right? In the Constitution. Okay, we talked about that. We talked about what? Implied and inherent powers. Okay, and then reserved for the states. Okay, and example, Jeffrey, you said what again?
Local governments and speed limits.
All right, good job, good job. So maybe marriage certificates, right? Different types of license. Okay, you could also say about education. It's a big one for states that are reserved for them. Good, good. What about concurrent powers? What are they? Concurrent. Madden, concurrent powers?
Powers which are shared by
Yeah, good job. So they're shared by the national and state governments. Good. And what are examples for concurrent powers. Brock, what examples do you have for concurrent powers? Yeah, good job. Good job. Taxes. Okay, what do you say? Regulating elections? Okay, good, good. Awesome. All right, is there any questions on reserving concurrent powers? Yes, no? Okay, so remember delegated, that means that it's national powers, reserve state, concurrent, they're shared. And make sure you remember examples for each. Okay, so terms for today. I'm briefly going to talk about this one court case today. Maybe we have some time at the end of class. I'll explain that. Well, I'll show you a video. All right, I know you have reserved already and concurrent in your vocab, but we have the Supremacy Clause and Marbury versus Madison, 1803. I know we talked about judicial review already, but I just want to add that one to vocab as well, just because I think it's important when we're mentioning about Marbury versus Madison and what it actually established. So I'm adding judicial review to the vocab. There we go. All right, so what do we have? Supremacy Clause. What do we got? Nathaniel? Okay, all right. So if there's ever a conflict, let's say at the national state level, okay, they look at the Constitution for justification, for an explanation, right? So it's referring to the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. Okay, and there's many court cases. We already talked about one with McCulloch versus Maryland, and today we'll talk one about Marbury versus Madison, where the Supremacy Clause comes into effect.
Just keep going.
Oh, you're good. What are you
I
looking for?
just need three people, Carla, Camden and Bella.
and they can come over one at a time when it's convenient for you.
Okay.
Wait and vision. Carla, Camden, and Bella.
All right, Camden's
Alright.
at a presentation right
Candace
now.
not there, okay?
So he might be back towards the end of the period. He might
It's
not.
all right, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Oh, you're good, thanks. Judicial review, what do we have? Judicial review, Chase, what do you got?
Review by the U.S. Supreme Court of the Constitutional Ballot Review.
Yeah, good job. This falls in line with really the checks and balances and how the judicial branch ranks up there with the executive and the legislative branch. Okay, without Marbury versus Madison, probably wouldn't have judicial review, whereas Supreme Court interprets the law and really keeps the legislative branch in check, Congress in check. All right, and then finally, Marbury versus Madison, 1803. What do we have? Go ahead, Tanner.
The U.S. Supreme Court case that essentially established the principle of judicial review.
Yeah, good job. So establish judicial review. Okay, the conflict here between the really with Congress and making sure that the judicial branch has power that can keep the Congress legislative branch in check. All right, so real quick, I just want to go over these things here with you. Okay, we already talked about reserve powers, talked about concurrent. And you guys, I'll have an assignment where you kind of shape that. It's really the same figure that what you read out of the textbook on Wednesday, but it's just to help you out and understand some of these powers that are shared, maybe that are just specifically stated for the delegated powers or for the reserve powers. And it's going to be an essay question on a test. So I want to make sure you guys have that. You can refer back to it. It's just a Venn diagram. That's really all it is. So I'll have you guys working on that after today's lesson here. So Supremacy Clause. So the Constitution, laws, and treaties of the U.S. are the supreme law of the land. So the Constitution stands above all other forms of law. So if there's ever a dispute, if there's ever an issue at the state, national level, they refer back to the Constitution for justification. Right, Rem? Okay, good. Yeah. So again, this is really to try to end all disputes or discussions, and this is to end all conflicts with one another. If there's ever any type of really court case between the national government and the state government, or vice versa, okay, they're going to refer back to the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. And this is really being set precedent in Madison versus Marbury and McCulloch versus Maryland. That's why I wanted to talk about those two court cases specifically in this chapter, because it deals with federalism. It deals with how the Constitution is referred to in many occasions when disputing a conflict or an issue. So it holds together the complex structure that is the American federal system. And this graph here really explains it in detail. So with the supreme law of the land, with the Supremacy Clause, okay, with McCulloch versus Maryland, okay, we talked about how that was established with implied powers in the elastic clause of necessary and proper. That even though it's not specifically stated in the Constitution, the federal government has powers that are overstretched, okay, that are elastic, right? That expand past what's actually stated and what's not stated. And same thing with McCulloch versus Maryland. Okay, this court case really was about John Adams, once he was leaving presidency and Thomas Jefferson was becoming president, the third president of the United States. Madison wanted to try to establish Marbury as a federal court justice. And we all know that the president appoints these Supreme Court justices, but Jefferson, he decided to tell Madison, who will later become the next president, to delay his job, his occupation as Supreme Court justice. And obviously, with that being said, Marbury was a little upset with that. It's like, oh, I just want my position as a federal court. This doesn't make any sense. You're delaying really the inevitable. You're delaying me of becoming a Supreme Court justice. And why do you think Jefferson wanted to try to delay Marbury from becoming a Supreme Court justice? Why do you think, Jeffrey?
So he can make a difference.
What's that?
So Jefferson can make a difference.
Okay. All right, good. And why do you think you would want to do that? What was the debate before building up with really the first, second president establishment of the Constitution? What political parties were there?
Federalist, and then there was the Democrat.
Okay, anti-federalist, right? We know Jefferson was a Democratic Republican. He was more for state rights. And if John Adams got his way and appointed Marbury to the Supreme Court, that means maybe three branches of the government might be swayed towards the Federalist, right? And Jefferson saw this as unequal treatment, unequal for the Democratic Republicans. That's why he delayed it. And what do you think Marbury decided to do? He decided to push Congress and say, hey, this is unconstitutional. This isn't right. I deserve my job. I was appointed by the previous president, John Adams, and I should be able to have this position. And with that being said, it kind of faltered. And Marshall, who was a part of the Supreme Court, he decided, well, just because we can't really push this, Congress can't push for this really statement of Marbury becoming a Supreme Court justice, we're going to look at judicial review and show that the judicial branch actually has more power to deem the Congress is unconstitutional, and referring it to the Supremacy Clause. Like, we're going to refer back to the Constitution and understand exactly where this states. And in Article 3, we all know the judicial branch is established and it's interpreting the legislative branch's laws that are established. So this is setting up the three-branch system and really setting up judicial review and giving the judicial branch more power than, obviously, well, equal power for these checks and balances. Without this court case, well, this would allow Congress to do whatever they want without challenge, okay? And that there's no check against Congress, the legislative branch. Does that make sense? Okay, so again, following suit with the Supremacy Clause and judicial review for this court case here. Last one, so nation's obligations to the states. Since we talked about really delegated powers, reserved and concurrent, this idea of federalism, it's important to understand what the nation, what they're obligated to do and perform for the states. So when you're looking at Republican form of government, it really just explains as a representative form of government. Okay, so that there is, we have these elected officials that are representing different parts, whether it's at the local, state, or national level. That's what that means. Protects against invasions. Obviously, that's clear that the national government will protect each and every individual state. Territories as well, right? So World War II, Pearl Harbor, Hawaii, right? And how that was up for the national government to protect that territory. And today, states like Texas, states like Florida, okay, Arizona, a lot of these states that are closer to the southern border, they're reaching out to the government, the national government, for protection. A lot of it because of immigration, right? And that's one of the issues that's arising today, and how the national government, in the viewpoint of Texas, they're not holding up their end of the bargain. So protects against domestic violence, disasters, uprisings. Okay, so any type of rebellions, National Guard comes in, protects the citizens, the individuals of whatever said state. Let's say it's a hurricane, a natural disaster. National government will send funding, send a National Guard to try to protect and clean up some of the areas. And recognize the legal existence of physical boundaries of each state. So making sure that these states, okay, obviously don't try to do harm to one another. And there's a court case I think that's important. We'll talk about it next chapter with New Jersey and Philadelphia, and how New Jersey was trying to restrict some of the waste coming from Philadelphia. National government said, nope, Philly's allowed to send their waste, their trash, to be really just taken care of in New Jersey, which is an interesting court case. Doesn't make any sense really to protecting the environment, but the national government controls this commerce. All right, is there any questions on that, guys? With federalism, with concurrent, reserved, and state powers, Supremacy Clause, judicial review? Okay, all right. So I'll let you guys work on this assignment now. Shouldn't take you too long to complete. You're just labeling the powers for the concurrent, reserved, and delegated powers. And it's just really an easy way for you guys to remember it. and to look at as a study tool for your test, because it's definitely going to be a question on the assessment. So go into modules, work our way down to federalism, national, state, and shared powers. Publish that now. It's really just a Venn diagram explaining it. You might have to, in the centerpiece, label it concurrent, because I don't think I labeled that. I just had it in the middle. I was creating it. Yeah, you'll have to label concurrent powers in the middle. Okay? All right, so I'll give you the rest of the time to work on that. You should be able to get it completed for tomorrow. All right, so Nurse Jane wanted Camden, Carla, and who else? Bella. Okay, so you guys will have to head down to Nurse Jane then, okay? It shouldn't take too long. I think it's just height, weight, and vision. That's it.